Hello, everyone. At the outset, wishing you all a very happy Earth Day. Our planet is an amazing place to live, but it needs our help to thrive. That's why each year on April 22nd, we are seeing people around the world celebrating Earth Day. To more than anything else, at least introspect as to how much efforts we are taking and how many more efforts we are supposed to take to protect our Mother Earth. We are seeing different phenomena around us that is adversely impacting the basic survival of all the beings and species on the earth. I can't agree more that we are seeing a lot of understanding, maturity with which today's generation has accepted and they are working towards making the earth a better place to live in. However, the question is it sufficient? Is it okay? Are we at the right pace? And today, along with the celebration, we are also going to take this sensitive yet a very important topic for discussion on how, why, what can be done, along with the strong collaboration and partnership that we have in place to achieve the sustainability goal of climate change action. Just to introduce myself briefly, I'm Khyati Amlani. I am joining from Mumbai. I'm working with the French MNC Big Cello India Private Limited as Legal Counsel India and APAC. How I'm associated with DAS? I'm a member of Special Projects Committee, and I have been helping them out of my sheer interest in achieving the SDGs, which is a very, very important topic and needs proper concentration to get desired results. So I'll be serving here as a master of ceremony for this event. I welcome each one of you who is present in this session, right from the participants. I'm overwhelmed with the number of participants who have shown keen interest in this partnership. Also, I welcome the partners, Earth Day Network India, the DIAS, Tears of the Earth, and Learning Planet, our moderators, Jasmine and Nida, and all our panelists, whom we'll be introducing shortly. I'm glad to say that we have indeed received not only an overwhelming response on registration, but also great questions, very interesting and very relevant questions, which shows that the topic which we are talking about is not just theoretical in nature. Climate change is no more restricted or reserved to theoretical discussions, but people are more interested in seeing what are the concrete actions that people, institutes, organizations are doing with the promises or with the kind of goals that they are planning to make. Just to give the context of today's session, recognizing the need for strong partnership, Earth Day Network India, the DIAS, Tears of the Earth, and Learning Planet Alliance have continued their collaboration from the International Day of Education in January 2022 at the Learning Planet Festival. And now we are celebrating Earth Day together with many partners, organizations from around the world. Partners of Earth Day Festival 2022 are hosting a high-level panel discussion on stronger partnership for better planet with stakeholders and representatives from across the industry, academia, science, arts, and civil society. The focus is to understand, explore, and identify different ways in which we can collaborate to make more effective and creative ways to conserve our planet. I am sure this panel discussion is going to be very rich in terms of having insight, and also the esteemed panelists will be able to answer the questions which are framed by the participants. Now, going forward, I would like to introduce our guests today, Miss Neela Majumdar from Earth Day. As such, she doesn't need introduction, but just for everyone, Neela leads climate literacy program in India. There are several projects which are led by her, and these includes filmmaking competition Earth Reel, Its digital version is conducted in 8 different Indian languages. Morning assembly reaches 1 lakh students every year to encourage them to lead the change. Neela, I would request you to unmute and share your opening remarks, please.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? I'm sorry, I was having some connectivity issues as usual, so sorry about that.
Yes.
As you all know, Earth Day, happy Earth Day, everyone. Each year our theme is different. Thank you for joining us to invest in our planet, which is the theme this year. In 2020, which was our 50th anniversary, the theme was Take Climate Action, and the time to take climate action really is now. Last year, the theme was Restore Our Earth, and this year's theme being Invest in Our Planet. It's basically a call to action, a partnership for all, whether it's governments, businesses, individuals, to act collectively in partnership to make change possible. And we call it an investment because then you can actually expect a return on investment. Let us not imagine that doing something good for the environment will not be beneficial to us as well. It obviously will have amazing impacts on our health and well-being. But say going, being part of the circular economy or switching to renewables, it will have financial impacts as well, which we will benefit from. We've all seen in the last couple of years, the number of cyclones have increased, the number of extreme weather conditions have increased, the number of climate refugees have increased. So all these have a financial impact. And that is why we say if we make a sort of investment in our planet, an investment in being more eco-conscious, being more environmental friendly, taking sustainable practices forward, no matter what sector we're in. If your governments then improved legislations and policies, in businesses, there's so much that can be done. Every decision should be made keeping in mind the sustainability lens. And of course, as individuals, as much as we can do. Today being Earth Day, I don't know if you've checked our Earth Day Network Facebook page, but there have been so many messages coming in, so many actions that we suggest people to do. One just has to go onto the earthday.org page for example, do a small cleanliness drive or to put in all your commemorative events so that you can inspire other people to do the same. We actually have a live sort of interactive map which tells us where things are happening. You mentioned programs in India such as morning assembly. This is happening in schools across India. I think Rumit was there this morning at one. In Faridabad, I am in Kolkata, so I attended a college session where the students were all geared up because this was their first event after COVID where they could actually get together. So they were really enthused to take part in different activities, not just activities such as what the children do, sit and draw competitions and things like that, but the college students were part of a Shark Tank experience because they all want to be green earthpreneurs, as we call them, to be part of the green economy. So we hope that they're being mentored by the Confederation of Indian Industries, who was also our partner for that event. So a lot is going on across the world, and I hope to put it up on our social media handles so all of y'all can be inspired by that. Today, I'm really delighted that our partner organizations, the DIAS, Tears of the Earth, and of course the Learning Planet Festival, with whom we partnered in January for their main program for teachers and other important stakeholders, are taking this Earth Day as a next gap to perhaps the next COP where more climate action is going to happen. So we're delighted to have all our stakeholders together. And I now hand the mic familiar faces. There's banglanatak.com, Ananya Bhattacharya, who represents art and culture and how that is also important. for the green economy, for the environment. We have people from industry, so we can learn from them. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Neela. Thanks for your quick but very in-depth introduction. Lots of things. Every line had something to learn, to be frank. And Earth Day is really doing a great job by creating awareness, because that is the need of an hour. The more awareness that you create, the more involvement you will see of people around. Thank you so much, Neela. Welcome. Talking about our next guest, Mr. Ed Stevenett. Ed is at heart passionate about facilitating learning experiences that help people to take care of themselves, others, and the planet. He joined the Learning Planet team in 2020 to support the development of collaborations and interactions between the growing Learning Planet community. He is working notably on the launch and facilitation of thematic circles that tackle learning of sustainability, youth empowerment, and transitions in higher education. Ed, I would request you for your opening remarks, please.
Thank you so much, Khyati. It's such a pleasure to be here. Happy Earth Day to everybody, and such an important day. Wanted to share a huge thank you as well to the Earth Day team for the extraordinary amount of work you've put into making this happen, this truly global event. We know from the Learning Planet team some of the work that goes into making that happen, and thank you so much for inviting us to be on board here as well. It's really truly a pleasure to be able to see the connections building between these emblematic events. Huge thank you also to the Dais, to Keshav, as always, for his commitment to making these collaborations happen through these events. To Rumid, to the Tears of the Earth team as well. It's really been a pleasure to bring together and to join on board this kind of really collaborative effort over the coming couple of days as well of events. Olivier, my colleague, will be sharing a bit more later in the session on the panel. Really at the base for us, though, our commitment is uniting a growing community of hundreds of actors in the transformation of education. And we're really trying to create spaces that foster really radical, meaningful collaboration between actors, as you mentioned, across learning for sustainability, particularly today, youth empowerment, transitions in higher education, and more. I wanted just to land on and end on the focus on youth here as well, because it's been a true pleasure to see this emerge in Earth Day over the next coming days. Today particularly, it's been incredible seeing the hundreds of events across the world that really have youth at the center, whether it is through the calls to action, whether it's through co-creation events. And this is something from the very beginning that we were discussing with the Earth Day, Tears of the Earth, the Dais teams. Where are we making sure that we're bringing youth into this emblematic event and day, and really fostering meaningful and active collaboration and co-creation. So today it was a real pleasure to have Amban from the Learning Planet community join as a speaker to share. We can also see a couple of youth fellows as well in the audience, and we'll be focusing later today as well on bringing youth to talk about indigenous wisdom and learning for sustainability. And then tomorrow it's diving into really active co-creation, firstly on youth from our council sharing with their organizations, how do we make sense of sustainability? How do we make it make sense? And then in the afternoon, a really amazing event on co-creating for investing and supporting and conserving our planet. And so we're just so privileged to be able to join these sessions that place youth at the center. I'll be sharing as well in the chat a bit of information about the Youth Fellows community that we're building, which is really to try to build a bridge between some of these incredible youth and youth organizations and connect them, to really some organizations that are meaningful for them in terms of climate action, youth empowerment, transitions in education, and much more, and really foster this growing collaborative community. So we'll share a bit more about that later, but thanking you for your time and really looking forward to the session ahead.
Thanks, Ed. Like you rightly said, it's very important to have the youths be pushed to come forward and invest their time, their intellect in this subject, because every time whatever outcome we are seeing will be depending upon the then generation. They will be responsible, at the same time they will be the beneficiary. So let's see how we can make the most of today's session, what fruits we can bear at the end of the session. Now I'm really excited to call upon my moderators for today's sessions, who will be introducing the panelists as well. Let me quickly take you through the bios, the profiles of my moderators. To start with, Neda Jamal. She is a young postgraduate in environmental health science and management, and she has a strong hold on botany. She is currently working as a program manager at the Tears of the Earth organization, leading the Sustainosphere initiative. Ms. Neda has executed several projects like Green Switch, and she has worked on climate bathtub program. During her master's, she worked on comparative study and analysis of plastic-eating bacteria from various sites in Delhi. You will find her besides a giant pile of books and enjoying good food when she is not working. She's on a path to starting an organization working at the intersection of women and climate. Welcome, Neda. To talk about Jasmine. Jasmine has moderated and also been a spokesperson in many of the panels. She's a development expert working in this sector for over 13 years now, and her expertise is in the field of youth and women development. Her work involves working at the grassroots level with different rural communities, bringing her more closer, like a mirror image, to what we call the life skill trainings, facilitating workshops and dialogues, which would help them to become empowered. She has done research projects with several national as well as grassroots level institutions, which are dedicating their time to women empowerment, education, skill development, and livelihood creation. Welcome, Jasmine. Now I request both of you to introduce all the panelists, and let's take the panel discussion forward. Over to you.
So thank you, Khyati, for such a lovely introduction, and really, I would like to take this opportunity to warmly welcome all of you once again. And it's such an honor to have you all with us. And hopefully we'll be going home with something really incredible. Starting with the introduction of 5 panelists that we have. We have firstly Piyush Jaju, who is the co-founder and CEO of O-Energy and one of the leading and multiple award-winning social enterprises promoting solar solution and agri-tech products. And he's an economics graduate who has prior experience in financial services and investment banking within India, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia. And Piyush has received prestigious international fellowship from Santa Clara University. And for its work, O-Energy has received multiple awards such as Swedish International Development Agency Innovation Against Poverty Award, SEED Award, WWF Climate Solver Award, and the list goes on. Secondly, we'll be moving forward with the introduction of our second panelist, Mrs. Rupa Chakravarti. She's an educationist and currently the director of the education at Sun City School, Gurugram. And Mrs. Chakravarti holds an education background with a master's of Arts from Loreto Convent, St. Joseph Convent, and Calcutta University. And she's been simultaneously trained in different several education programs at prestigious institutions, including IIM Ahmedabad, Harvard Business School, and Harvard School of Education. And she has served also with numerous committees for education, including the review and implementation of new education policy in India, and presented paper internationally in Mauritius, Sri Lanka, Turkey, US, Japan, to name a few countries. Thirdly, we have panelist Anban Raj, who is a visionary young leader and a leadership advocate from Malaysia. He's currently the president of the World Youth Leader Organization, an organization founded by him with the aim of empowering, leading, and connecting young people from all across the globe. And under his leadership, the organization launched its flagship projects, the Youth Leader Program. It's the world first virtual leadership development course for young people by young people with unlimited need-based scholarship. And the unborn drive and motivation to harness the power of young people continues to be the heart of his work in effort to build better and sustainable world by making quality education in all sectors fair and accessible. So welcome to you. Moving on with our fourth panelist, Mrs. Ananya Bhattacharya. She's an electrical engineer from Jawadhpur University and also a Commonwealth Scholar with Master in Sustainable Development from Staffordshire University. She is the co-founder and director of social enterprise BanglaNatak.com, working across India for inclusive and sustainable development using culture-based approaches. And she specializes in gender, culture, and sustainability. BanglaNatak.com uses cultural and digital media to empower women and young people to work as change makers. And she has worked with diverse communities for improving environment and conservation of nature. And her articles and paper have been published across different books and journals. And she's also a member of executive community of Council of Monuments and Sites, bureau member of International Scientific Community on Cultural Tourism, and also a member of ISC on ICH. She's also involved in developing a lot of international charter for responsible for cultural tourism and basically outlining how it can address adaptation and mitigation of climate change. Moving on with our fifth panelist, and last but not the least, Olivier Brechard. He's a Chief Operating Officer of Learning Planet. And in the past year, he has specialized in design and management of other global initiatives addressing the future of learning, notably as Executive Director of WISE 2008 to 2012. Olivier has also contributed to the range of exemplary programs such as Global Education Future, Global Education Leadership Partnership, the Global Education Challenge, and Learning Without Frontiers, MBR Smart Learning program in Dubai, to name a few. So welcome, a really hearty, cordially invite you to this conversation. And now I will hand over the floor to Jasmine to start with the first set of questions for our panelist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neda, and a warm welcome to all the participants and especially our panelists for taking out the precious time to dedicate this dialogue for a fruitful conversation, especially when we talk about climate change and the urgent need to take actions to ensure that we have a sustainable future ahead. Coming to the first question, Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So my first question is, today's central theme that we are addressing says, how do we act together? So I would request all the panelists to suggest different ways we can actualize this or the actions we can take together. I would like Ms. Rupa Chakravarti to answer this question first.
Thank you, Jasmine. And what a pleasure and honor to be here. Everybody, happy Earth Day. But I guess every day should be an Earth Day so that we don't forget the responsibility we have and not make it an occasion. And I think that's what many of you are doing. We are doing it in a little bit because we touch in a way which we do not see the results of. In other words, we touch the hearts and the souls of little ones who will go out and make the world a better place to live in. So I believe that the first thing that we need to do for sustainability and come together is the SDG 17, that's partnership, and ensuring that we come together under forums like this, where we bring about awareness. So I think these 2 points are very important, that we ensure that the future of the earth is secure by teaching our children well and having orientations and brainstorming like we are having today to ensure that the best practices are going to come forth. So like if you say we are a school like ours, we are little better endowed than many other schools. So we have surplus solar energy, which we are actually selling off, because we have that much of solar energy that we've been able to capture. We ensure that water harvesting is happening, and we show all this to the children, because seeing is believing, and they know that we are walking our talk. And this is very, very important, because sometimes it just remains a chapter in the book, and when it comes to actionables, it is very little. So I think my 2-3 minutes are over, Jasmine, so I'll hold right here and then wait for the next question.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and appreciate the comments that have come from you. Next, I would like Olivia to answer this.
Thank you, Jasmine. It's a great pleasure to be with you all, and a happy Earth Day to everyone. And I'm not renewing all the thanks from Ed, but really thank you to everyone. Plenty of things to share. So quickly, I think indeed, as you started in the conversation, the sustainability issue and the collaboration around sustainability is linked to the future of the world's children. And is there a future for these children who will be staying long on the planet and for all other living species? So when we have this in mind, I think everything we do, every SDG should be reinvented in the view of this as a core priority. Then another point I think about the issue we're facing is that it's typically something that no one alone can achieve. No organization, no country. So SDG 17, the idea of collaboration, is at the heart of having some impact. And we have to think about this in a fractal way. We have to think it place-based, locally, in a community, in a school, in a city, at the national level, and at the global level. So we have to think in a fractal way of what can we do, and we have to act in a viral way so that we spread and share and learn from each other. And these are very big difficulties. So 2 points on this. If we try to reinvent education, we think, because it is what will do the shift on the long term. So on the long term, we have to rethink education in a way that cooperation and collective impact and collective learning is much more important than competition and individual success. And that's one of the strong bases. We have to look for inclusivity versus selectivity, because sustainable society needs to be inclusive. They have to be youth-led, co-constructed with the beneficiaries. They have to be nature-inspired. So education, if we reinvent it, I'm trying to share some of the key elements there. Solution-oriented. All the young generation needs solution. Project-based. So these are kinds of things allowing wisdom and science and tech. All these things I don't really see that often in our education models. So these are just things that I'm sharing. Notably, Melati Vaishan from Indonesia shared some of these key ideas which we keep. So the inspiration comes from there. The other thing I want to say then, and I will stop, not to be too long, is that in order to do so, we need indeed to find the new solutions to share. If you come from science or open science, scientists do learn from each other and make progress. If you work in the digital field, platforms like GitHub allow coders to make progress, learn from each other, win time. When we are working in the social impact, education fields, a lot of thousands or 100,000 of incredible people are doing things on the ground which are great, but they don't really know how to learn from each other, do things together to scale, share them with a broader audience. So these would be my initial comments.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Next, we have Ms. Ananya for her remarks.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking Earth Day for inviting me to this wonderful forum. And I look forward to learning and collaborating with all of you. When we are talking of coming together, I think the main essence is, coming together, as Olivia also mentioned, at local level. So the community, we need to be conscious that we are engaging the community, consulting them And that helps to understand the local biodiversity. It helps to understand the local impact of climate change. And, communities have wonderful knowledge. Like I live close to Sundarban, one of the most endangered areas across the world, the mangrove deltas. And they know, they understand from a tidal wave from which direction the cyclone will be coming, or they know which are the fish breeding areas where fishing should not be done. So it's very important to harness the local knowledge systems and work with communities to make micro plans for climate action, which will support conservation, which will support mitigation and adaptation measures. So, it has to be a partnership of academics, scientists, researchers to and working with the communities. I think Olivia also mentioned the nature-based solutions. It's very important that, we do nature-based solutions based on the local knowledge. Otherwise, if you try to impose solutions, that often affects. Again, going back to Sundarban, in the mangrove delta, there were mangrove species planted which were not particular to that region because local people were not consulted. So all those efforts went in vain. So I think when we're talking of coming together, I'd like to highlight on that point.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ananya. I think that's a very important point that you have highlighted, because often we see that the policy makers who are sitting at the highest positions take decisions on behalf of the communities which are actually against their assessments. So no proper assessments often lead to mishaps rather than the positive outcomes. So thank you so much. Next, I would like to ask this question to Anban.
Thank you so much to everyone for bringing all of this together. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be with you. And I'm really looking forward to all of the discussions. So basically, on the idea of sustainability, what I understand about it is the act of shaping our today without jeopardizing another's tomorrow. So who is actually our tomorrow? Young people. Even though we are 18% of today, we are actually 100% of the future. And like all the panelists mentioned earlier, we are really taking proactive steps in order to shaping this future that we envision. So in this process, this includes climate action, where it's a powerful movement that calls for change, in fact, immediate change to tackle climate change before it is too late. And in this process, I believe that it's really important to incorporate the SDGs, like Mr. Olivier mentioned earlier, into education systems all across the globe. Like even from me, I'm from Malaysia, and I did not hear the term Sustainable Development Goal until I was 18 years old. So that is, I would say, a failure in the education system in order to teach young people earlier on in life what are the pivot points or the importance of climate change and all the other SDGs, and how they could actively get involved to actually tackle these problems and empower them along the way. So I believe that this would be my opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anban. Finally, I would like to ask Mr. Piyush the same question.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I would really like to echo what the other speakers have said about this making this a collaborative atmosphere and really engaging more youth, make it led by children, and really making them aware. And I would like to share a personal story, especially with this, because this year I could really feel the pulse of Earth Day for a personal reason, because my daughter, she's gone to class 3 right now, and she's been so excited over the last 1 week. Of course, schools have started since the last 2 years, but now they're having to make a project with recycling. They have to make chart papers. You have to do this. So for the last 1 week, she's just been so excited, and she's an 8-year-old, and that is really inspiring me also. Today in the morning, she's scolding me that why are you wasting so much water while brushing your teeth? So, those are small little things that have such a deep impact. If I were to lecture my daughter about Earth Day and other things, she wouldn't even bother listening to me. But if their teachers say, or if it comes from the school, she would be so much more attentive, and she would be so much more aware. So how we can really make this movement led by small young people, and that could create such a big difference. And especially at work, that's what we are doing. We started a program with energizing educational institutions. So with that, we have provided solar power to more than 200 schools and colleges. We've engaged with more than 400 schools with having various different workshops with relating to climate change, relating to how you can reduce your carbon footprint. So those are certain things which I think would take it really go forward when we are really talking about acting together.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piyush. I think some very valid points that have come through with this question. Moving on to the next question, which is as critical as the one that was asked earlier, because even today, despite many people being aware about the climate change, we still have individuals or institutions, it could be government, business, houses, or communities, who do not feel that climate change is a critical matter. According to you all, what could be the reason? Is it just sheer ignorance, or do you think selfish motives come into play? First, I would like to ask this question from Anban, because he works with youth. So I would really like to ask Anban to go ahead with the comments for this.
Thank you so much for that. So I believe, I would say the main problem that is plaguing, I would say, the younger generation is that we ask ourselves, if it does not affect me, why should I particularly care about it? And this is a mindset that I believe that needs a lot of change. And this particular mindset, in fact, reflects both selfishness and ignorance to a certain extent, because in this context, they are both oblivious to the fact that it is an imminent threat that would eventually affect everyone at every level at some point. Just because it does not affect them at that point that they are in life does not mean 10, 20 years down the road is not going to affect them. So I believe that, as panelist said earlier, it should be instilled when they were still much younger, to teach them, take small steps for bigger results later on when they are older. And I believe that this would pay off very much in the long run. And even in the short run, we can educate people through, I would say, educational events and courses and so forth, and incorporate all of these important elements into the educational system in a more formal sense. So I hope that would be my remarks for that.
Thank you so much. Next, Olivia.
Yes, sorry, thank you for this. Everything we do within the Learning Excellence Initiative is to try to bring together upper ground institutions like universities and governments and international organizations, and together with on-the-ground players and social entrepreneurs and network of educators, students, and the underground, the activists, so that they can do things together that they can't do alone. And my response to your question is that, in fact, we start to do things with all those who are convinced, and we try to bring their forces together. And the stronger we are together, the more we can influence. And I think there are probably some people going against this vision, but the biggest risk is maybe the inertia of so many which are not really getting engaged. So I think if we can bring together and start by bringing together all those who are doing things, but make them stronger. One of the issues we are facing, and I was part of Planetary Emergency, which is an initiative started by Club of Rome and Potsdam Institute on climate change, which is great, which is bringing together hundreds of organizations in this field. One of the problems is, although we represent millions or hundreds of millions of people, how strong are you at a global level against one lobbyist being very efficient on one very specific point with one government? And the thing is, it's not the same equal. So let's not bother about those who really don't agree. Let's fight with all those who want, and let's be more efficient together.
Thank you so much. Ms. Rupa.
So I was just mulling over this point, and I felt there are certain things, it's like a Marie Antoinette statement, you know, that nothing can touch me. And like, it's literally like, if you don't have bread, eat cake, kind of. So these are people who are living in ivory towers, who do not want to accept the truth and see what the change is. I also believe it happens to people who resist change, you know, so they don't want to accept new things. And lastly, I think the countries which have developed, they are the ones who need to be very conscious about it, because the poor countries are still close to nature and they follow the pattern that's existed many years back, and they try and, you know, keep close to nature, because if you go to Africa, you will see that plastic is not allowed, and they don't let, of course, it's not a poor country, whether it's Kenya or Tanzania, but what I'm saying is that they've realized the power of nature, the power of natural resources. So we need to bring that awareness into everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rupa ma'am. Next, I would like Mr. Piyush to answer this.
Sure. So I think just adding on to what the rest of the people have said, what I believe that we really need to change the way that we are communicating things to the different target audience. Of course, it's general nature to be resistant or to stay in your comfort zones. And particularly having interacted with various different kinds of people. So, for example, if I'm going in a rural area, speaking to a farmer, of course, that person is not at all bothered about climate change, whereas they are having to bear the biggest brunt with changing climate. So we don't even go about, when we are promoting, say, a solar irrigation pump or a solar light, we don't even talk about how it could improve the environment. We just talk about how it can help you economically, financially become better off, because it's going to double your income levels. We talk about how your social life will be so much better. We talk about how you will have to not worry about polluting diesel hitting on your face. So those are things that really hit them. And say, if we are talking to an industrialist, we just don't talk about how a solar rooftop on top of their industry can really save the environment. We are just talking about pure economic financial numbers, because that's what they understand. It's going to significantly save you. This can give you a significantly better return on your investment. Or if I'm talking to somebody, my nearby housemate, I would rather talk about how we are having a crisis. There are load sheddings happening. There are power cuts happening across India because of the coal crisis. There's a water crisis happening. Water is sometimes coming, it's not coming. So those are certain things that how we can have lifestyle changes, so that so many things that we take for granted, such as electricity and water, and those things may not be there in future. So we have to really relate the way that we talk to different people with what they really feel about. And with those things, we can make people more aware. And I think it's a more problem with the elder generation. The younger ones are still, thanks to the wonderful school education and all the efforts that are being taken over there, they're still much more aware. But I think it's the older generation that is more resistant to change, and that those are certain things, how we can really engage them with certain things that they really care for.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piyush. The final comments from Ms. Ananya. Before that, I would like to inform to all the participants that once the panel discussion is over, we have a round of question answers from the participants who are here today. So we will be taking questions at that time. So Ms. Ananya, your final comments on this question.
You know, when we talk of knowing, there are three aspects to it. One is what we know, like we know how to read English, for example. What we don't know, so I don't know how to climb Mount Everest. And then there's this huge gamut of what I don't know that I don't know. I think the biggest challenge we have is the limited human ability to anticipate that what can happen. We have seen with the pandemic, in the early stages of pandemic, worldwide, we have seen that how with limited human knowledge, we are unable to cope with the Anthropocene impact on the environment, right? So in this context, I think what is needed is to develop understanding on the varied ways in which climate change is affecting us. I work on cultural heritage, right? And we work with basketry makers, and worldwide, be it at New Zealand, Maoris, or Sri Lanka, or India, with climate change, the animal and plant species are changing, right? And they are not getting raw material. Also, the small islands, they're sinking, so they have to shift, and people have to give up traditional festivals, traditional sites where they met, they celebrated, and suddenly, they are forced into a different way of life, and all this is also leading to conflict, to communal tension. So these non-economic dimensions also, which are very intangible in nature. Then there are the gender dimensions, how women are getting doubly affected with this water crisis in the hills, for example. So the non-economic losses related to climate change, how people's rights are getting violated, these are not known. So I think what we need to focus on is, to assess all these dimensions, document them, and communicate them. I completely agree with the other panelists that, the target groups and our communication pattern, but we also don't know, people don't know, and we need to document, assess, and tell them.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ananya, and thank you to all the panelists for such a wonderful response to the questions that were asked. And in fact, I completely believe that it's us who have to start the actions. And if we have not taken it now or considered it seriously, it's time we think of it. And just a few minutes back, when I was sharing with my mother that I'll be going onto a session today, and today is Earth Day. It happens to be my daughter completes 2 months of her birth today itself. And I remember when throughout my pregnancy, both me and my husband, we would keep looking for products or things that were close to the nature or didn't harm the environment, which we wanted to buy for her. So be it the clothes or anything for that matter, we would just think on those. But that is when we realized we did get comments from other parents or other people around us and said, hey, why are you pushing yourself so much? Just go and buy this because it's much easier to procure. So listening to all those comments here, I think it's very important that each of us take small little actions to ensure that we do our bit to reduce the carbon footprint. So moving to the next set of questions, I would like to invite my co-moderator, Neda, to take forward the panel discussion.
Yeah, so following up on the questions that we have asked, now the third question is, what are some challenges faced by individual and organizations working towards sustainability and climate actions? You can give your perspective generally as well as maybe your own sector that you are dealing with. So starting from Mrs. Ananya Bhattacharya.
Sorry, I just lost your voice. Can you just repeat once more?
Yeah, so my question is, what are some challenges faced by individuals and organizations working towards sustainability and climate actions? And you can give your perspective generally as well as your own sector. So, yeah.
Okay. As I was mentioning earlier, right, that I work in a sector which is culture, right? And this strong interconnection of nature and culture, this is not there in discourse. In COP26, actually, in the last COP26, it was highlighted, with the indigenous people consultations, that we need to strengthen the knowledge, the technologies, practices, and efforts of local community and indigenous people. I already spoke about the nature-based solutions. So my main challenge when we face this strong interconnection of nature and culture, this is unknown. And we can see what is evidence, like we can see the tangible, the acidification or the melting water and the sinking islands, but the non-intangible dimensions people are so unconscious of. So I think that's one challenge and where we are really highlighting. Another thing which is a challenge is which we have already also discussed, that science, research, technology, finance, laws, everything needs to come together. So we need to connect all this. So we need legal measures, we need technical measures, administrative and financial measures. We work a lot on cultural tourism. Now tourism is increasing footprint, but tourism is also bringing in revenue, right? So how can tourism become green? How can tourism help community, even livelihoods? I'll take the example of Sundarban. There, there is a water plant called Shola, and people used to traditionally make festive decorations. Now we worked with them to develop livelihood to make Shola flowers and things like that, to replace plastic flowers and things. And in last 2 years of pandemic, as you know, the world went through a crisis, and that area, they had a super cyclone and another cyclone in 2 successive years. But still this community survived because they got this green livelihood. So all these concepts of green livelihood and how we can adapt using the local knowledge, I think it's an area which is so untapped. So this is something I feel we need to focus.
Thank you, Ananya, for such a incredible insight on the topic, and I'm sure the audiences are keeping note of questions they want to ask to all of you. Moving on with Anvan.
Thank you so much for that. So to give a more fresh perspective to this, I would like to give a perspective from young people. So from my experience, young people primarily face a challenge that their work is not necessarily supported or wanted, because some of them may feel like they're working at such a small level, at their community level maybe, that it does not create a real life impact. So a couple of months back, I had the opportunity to moderate a discussion with one of the advisors to the United Nations Secretary General, Vladislav Kaim. So we moderated a discussion, and the question was posed to him. He said, okay, how do I actually start doing this? And the primary point of discussion was that they did not feel supported. So what he said is that to overcome this, just do what you feel like you need to do. And no matter how big or how small it is, you should just do it. And if people do not believe in you at that point of time, it does not matter. However, you must believe in yourself and just go forward, because your small step would be an inspiration for another people, and there will be a ripple effect that will take place, and other people will be inspired. And in the end, collectively, everyone comes together, you'd actually make a difference in our world. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anvan. This actually hit home with me, because being a young person trying to do something, it just resonated very deeply. So thank you for that. And hopefully it motivates others to take up action and validates their experience as well. So moving with Mrs. Rupa Chakrabarti now.
Thank you. I was just thinking, with little ones, we have some policies that we follow when we are teaching, and they are near to far, simple to complex, known to unknown. So when we teach, we try and share our experiences, and we tell them things that they do in daily life and how they can do an energy audit. So I remember every year I tell them about how I lived in Udaipur in Rajasthan, where there was paucity of water. And I tell them how we didn't shower, and we used to shower once a week. And that too, after, I think later on, we stopped doing that because there was a huge paucity of water. Told them how they used to put bricks in the cistern so that the water, just that much of water would flow out. That is required, and not the surplus water that is there, and how potable water was carried to a long distance, and the NGOs would try to ensure that the water was made more easily accessible. So I told them about Rajasthan, and I also told them how I wash my own clothes to ensure that there's no waste of water, things like that. And children really connect with it. So if you help them by telling them things which are from near to far, known to unknown, they learn very quickly, and they'll come back and tell you, like, we have these taps where the water flows out for 30 seconds. And I remember these grade 7 students coming and telling me that, ma'am, you need to look into the taps because it's wasting water. We don't need water for 30 seconds. But we thought, when we optimize the time, that 30 seconds or 15 seconds would be right for this tap and for this tap. So I think it's fantastic how what you tell them, they start applying it. There's transversal education happening, and they start applying it, and they actually do energy audit. And of course, a lot of awareness, because if you put above the switches, that switch off when you leave the room and things like that, these are small steps, but it's literally drops make an ocean, and children learn very fast. So for me, that's how we go ahead teaching.
Thank you, Rupa Chakrabarti. I totally, completely agree with you about different strategies that you devise. And I think great educators are great storyteller, because for people to identify themselves in the story, and that could be a motivation, such a motivation for behavioral change. So I think it's incredibly important. Now moving on with Olivier.
Yes, I will maybe come back to things which have already started to be shared and discussed, but I think that for so many people facing so many challenges, which are sometimes complex, something that is important is to be able not to reinvent the wheel all the time, but to learn from others. So in India, I was very impressed years ago already by the Honeybee Network, launched by Professor Anil Gupta from Ahmedabad University, working with thousands of villages and farmers, looking at local frugal solution. What is a good water pump? How can you build it? If everyone suggests a solution, and then you find out which are the 3 or 4 which are the best one, and then you can be inspired and not have to reinvent it from scratch. And at every level of what we do to try to solve some of the problem, if we could have this kind of ways of mobilizing collective intelligence, of learning from what has been working. I know this very well in education. I see a mentorship program to fight dropping out that has started in Toronto. It takes 5 years to start it really well in the suburb of Toronto, 5 years to grow it so it really works, 5 more years so that it raises to the national level. And then someone else starts a mentoring program in another country without having a clue of what has been done there. And I think on the subject on which we are working to help people feel that they can achieve, that they are part of something bigger, it is what are the tools, solutions, approaches, networks, spaces that we develop so that we can access this kind of and this can be very frugal, very low tech, but as long as there is this sharing and this learning.
Thank you so much, Olivier, for your insights. And now, lastly, we will pass this question to Mr. Piyush.
Yes, thank you. So particularly when we talk about challenges, I think that the biggest challenge to address right now for us would be the elephant in the room, and which is talking about the government and the policymakers. Because they just have so much power. Just one decision can have such a massive impact on climate, either on a positive way or the negative way. And how we can really influence our policymakers, build a collective movement which can really start hearing our voices. And we've seen that all across. I mean, certain things like, certain states being very progressive with phasing out coal-based power plants and promoting with other clean energy sources, or with certain decisions being taken about how we need to have a certain green cover within our area. So those are certain things which are so much more critical, and what can be done at a local level, at a state level, at a national and of course at a global level, really for us to think about having ambitious, bold plans of getting into a net zero level, and then also reducing our overall climate change. So I think each one of us and small actions that we take have such a big role to play, and ultimately what can we do to influence them, and that is through the vote bank. How can we promote green jobs? How could we show that certain decisions taken positively for the climate can actually help them get more votes? So those are certain things that will be very, very critical to address, and that is I think that's a very, very big critical challenging piece in this entire debate.
Thank you so much, Piyush, for taking up such an important point of like law interventions and governance, like starting from top to bottom, which is actually going to have much larger impact than like youth mobilization and grassroots mobilization. Now I will move on to our next segment, which are basically specific questions that we have prepared for our panelists. So starting from Ananya Bhattacharya, since India is a rich country and land of color, languages, and cultures, what do you think is the binding force for all of us as Indians, and which is something critical and required for making any progress in sphere of climate change? Yeah.
I'll say, our cultural heritage, that has taught us sustainable ways of life through centuries. So it is a powerful tool which we can use. See, we need to adopt a different way of life, as Piyush was also saying, that we just cannot continue in this definition of development. It has to be different. We need to talk of slow food. We need to talk of minimalism, right? This consumerism culture, we need to stop. We need to lower our energy use. Now, how we communicate. One is, traditionally, it's our heritage of living very frugally, right? All our religions, all our stories, all our epics share, how nature is very close to us. And through songs, through drama, say, for example, again, going back to Sundarban, they have a folk drama called Bon Bibir Pala. So Bon Bibi is the lady of the forest. And they are the people, they, through that play, show how Bon Bibi, or the lady of the forest, is protecting them through various vagaries, various ill conditions. So, we have this immense knowledge of what we call intangible cultural heritage, which teaches us to revere nature. I've been traveling in Arunachal, a lot this year. And it is amazing how the communities have nature integrated in their life. They worship the mountains, they worship the rivers. So I think as India, answering your question, as India, I think we need to pull on this enormous resource. And if, again, going back to my point, if we tell the community that, what is threatening us, this tool itself will be a powerful tool of taking the message to a wide variety of people, be it young, be it old, be it the ones listening. So if we build the capacity of our communities to use their traditional knowledge, traditional songs, folklore, drama to share this message, make them the champions, I think it will be a very powerful force. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ananya. You have beautifully answered. The answer is to come back to our traditional roots and learn from them. And also, obviously, I look up the folklore and mythology that you're talking about, Bon Bibi. Yeah, that was very interesting. Next up, I have a question for Anban Raj. Can you talk about your experience extensively working with young people and how it is different from working with any other age demographic? So, yeah.
Thank you so much for the question. So essentially, with my overall experience with young people, so I work in an organization where I would say 90% of the people that we come into interaction with, be it individuals or even organizations, is actually young people. So I think one of the biggest differences that I've observed between, I would say, this generational gap is that young people tend to be a lot informal in their approach towards important things. For example, in climate change, I realized young people often like to communicate their messages through maybe illustrative graphics and so forth. Just a couple of days ago, I was in a webinar with an activist from Singapore who is campaigning for climate change. And what she has done uniquely is that to target Gen Z or millennials, young people, she has actually created a whole Instagram page which is dedicated towards this illustrative approach towards climate change. And it is not, I would say, meaningless. It is very meaningful in a sense that it raises questions on important topics and it pushes the boundaries on a lot of important topics that people don't commonly take, I would say, the initiative to deal with. So that would be my approach, my perspective on how young people approach this. And also, I would say young people need a lot more empowerment in a sense that for other people to give them the support and the belief that, okay, you can do this and you should trust yourself. So yeah, I would say these are the two main points that I've personally observed throughout dealing with young people.
Thank you, Anban, for making such a valid point. And now my question is to Mr. Piyush Jaju. What are the key takeaways from your journey through your career arc working in the field of sustainability? So if you can just give your first person experience. Yeah.
Sure. So I think journey for me has been more from doing activism to actually being more solutions oriented. So we've done a lot of work with in the early on days, doing a lot of activism with regards to climate change and moving away from fossil fuels. Did a lot of things, and that's when the realization came about that we really need to start taking action on the ground. And then we started to do more work with agriculture and with promoting solar energy and other clean energy sources, and right now also exploring electric vehicles. So I think that each one of us should really think more in terms of what is immediate solutions that can be done, and that is something that goes for everyone. That is a path that I took, that to become an entrepreneur and start looking at solutions which would be better for the environment. But each one of us can think, what are we doing if in future, if I want to do something, can it be more related to an industry which will be more climate friendly? Am I looking at more green jobs? Or what is, or in any way, how am I contributing to the environment, to the nature, to the people at large? So I think each one of us have a responsibility, and we have a purpose in which we want to be there. And just to finding that purpose and really driving that and inspiring others to do something in a very small way can just take you so much ahead, not for the earth, not for the world, but just for yourself. I'm just being more selfish, that it just brings so much more peace and satisfaction, even if you're able to inspire one person to do something in a way. And that's what gives each one of us so much more satisfaction. So those are certain things that we should celebrate, these small wins and small smiles. And that's what makes life much more meaningful and more purposeful.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piyush. I completely agree. Yeah, this will also inspire all of me and audiences that are tuning in to really take up that small mile or take up that small step, and make a difference. Now, I would like to pass it on to Jasmine to address other specific question to our panelists.
Thank you so much, Neda, and thank you once again to Anban, Ananya, and Piyush for answering the valid questions that we had in mind. Particularly, I'm sure the participants also had similar questions to which their queries have been cleared. My first question is to Ms. Rupa. When it comes to education sector, since you are an educationist, what are some of the ways India can ensure education regarding sustainability and climate action, particularly at primary and secondary levels?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because we are into it in a big way. And I think the first thing that you need to do is to look into the future. If you can envisage what the future will look like. I remember as a teacher of English, I was teaching this lesson again in Udaipur. Now, of course, we've moved to Gurgaon. But in Udaipur, where there was this tree with plastic and bits of cloth, hanging from it, and the leaves were very sparse on that tree. And that kind of stayed with me as a teacher. And today, sometimes when there is a wind and I see, plastic or hanging on the trees and bits of cloth hanging, I realize what somebody who had a vision saw it long time back and put it into that book. So I think the first thing we need to do is to envisage what the future will look like and then translate it into a climate literacy program for the children, and understand what you need to do. And I'm glad I have something I can show. So 5 years back, I introduced SDGs into our school curriculum. And our syllabus is made in such a way that we have multiple intelligences, we have SDGs, and since the last 3 years, we have design thinking incorporated into our learning. We've also started an SDG lab, in fact, with DIAS. That happened this year. So that's also a very good thing. But I wish to tell you how we use design thinking in our lessons. So there is a lesson on electricity in grade 7. You all know that it's taught in grade 7 and 8. So what we do over here is that we, of course, have climate action. SDG 30 will be seen. And you can see some of the books. I just pulled out a book. So sorry, can you see it? Yeah. So this book has this is for grade 3. So you can see over here that this is the thing on poverty. So need or want. And this book has got the SDGs already into that lesson. So this we started 5 years back, and the books, this is a parent who's written it actually. And so we've incorporated that. Now in the lesson, in electricity, we put in, of course, the SDGs that are relevant, whether it be cities, sustainability of cities, etc. And then in design thinking, they were asked to look around and see the wires running on which, and a picture was shown of a dead bird hanging from a wire. And they have to kind of think
how and why that dead bird was on that wire, and why this happened, and how they could, come out with solutions to this problem. So this electricity chapter has your awareness with the SDGs, and then it goes on to design thinking, and you think of innovative ways of correcting these errors, which are man-made, of course, and which the previous generations have made. Like, it's a very well-known saying which says you have not inherited it from your ancestors, but you have, borrowed it from the little ones, from the future. So I think these are things that we are doing which are radical. And I'm glad that this year I'm on a panel wherein from the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Skilling, and we've had numerous meetings with Anil Shastrabuddhe, who's the AICT chairperson, with Anita Karwal, who's Education Secretary, and Chairman CBSE, etc. And we've actually come out with the design thinking in schools, which is going to start from 2023. So all this is happening, and that's why I love the word radical, because it is necessary that we now come up with radical changes and ensure that we are auditing energy constantly. Thank you. That's what I needed to say.
Thank you so much, Rupa ma'am. I think it clears a lot for me personally as well, because I used to work a lot at the ground level, especially for life skill trainings and facilitation workshops. And the first time I had heard about design thinking, it got me into a thinking mode myself, that we do need to involve people to get solutions. Otherwise, just mere speaking about it without their involvement, or without asking them to analyze the situations on their own, the impact is not going to be to the level at which you and me are planning to see. So thank you so much, ma'am, for taking up this initiative at your personal level in your school. I'm sure many others who are here today will also take back with this wonderful learning and try to incorporate in their daily lives. My next question is to Olivier. Olivier, can you elaborate on some of the projects that you have headed and executed, like WISE and Global Education Futures, for our participants here today?
Yes, in fact, WISE, the main thing which when it started, was look at the solution, what works on the ground, start from there, have the local players, the great models. At the time, there was many players across India, like Design for Change, we were mentioning design, many players who were doing incredible things. Let's start from these players, show what exists, inspire governments, ministries, try to build a narrative. So throughout the years, this story is ongoing, trying to find new ways, new technologies, to make sure that we look at what works and bring people together and grow it. And doing this, we need also to weave them into a new narrative. In the field of education, there's a global dominant narrative, which is about meritocracy and exclusion, really, selectivity and things in many ways. And the systems are failing most of the young people. So how do we start changing the narrative? It goes on through work with very harsh competition, and there are other ways to do so. So how do we bring a collective impact narrative, or many different narratives, not one? Because as soon as you have one dominant narrative, it closes your imagination, it closes everything. So starting from what are the people doing on the ground, connecting them, helping them be stronger together, having also a vision of the future with Global Education Future and perspective, looking at the future of work as well as the future of education. So these are the things, but maybe all of this is coming in a direction, together with Ed, with Sinan, with many of the participants here, is that we would like to be able to help train game changers throughout life. How do we take the younger people, since they are 3 years old, 4 years old, and allow them to use their imagination, their knowledge, and do things differently and have some impact? And then we've met a lot of game changers who are 12 years old, like Melati Vijan, Kekashan Basum, many in the network of youth that we are bringing together are changing things, but often they have to make a choice between their academic success and their engagement. How do we make sure that the social engagement, everything that is done, is being recognized, and that you can really develop this as part? So we are trying to take this at the level of every level, at university, starting new programs with partner universities where these change makers, game changers are being recognized for what they do. And how do we insufflate this within lifelong learning? And how do we help also organization find a new purpose? What we see, and then I'll stop on this, but is we are being contacted by hundreds of industries, companies saying, okay, I can't keep my new employees. They stay there for 2 years, even if they work in AI, in the very best job, very best, and it lacks meaning, and they are dropping out and they're going to do something else. So how do we help the young generation and the older generation really be game changers, but recognized as such? But how do we help organization, all kinds of organization, to find a meaning that is also impacting society? And these are some of the things that, and that's been the work throughout WISE, Global Education Futures, looking at work, future of work, and very much with the Learning Planet initiative today.
Thank you so much, Olivier. The conversation seems interesting, but looking at the time, we need to respect that. So I would like to call upon my co-moderator, Neda, to take the final set of questions and the concluding remarks from all the panelists. Neda, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. So yeah, my concluding question is, what is the message you would like to give to our participants on this Earth Day, and then giving your reflections and remark on this whole dialogue that we have done today, starting with Mrs. Rupa Chakravarti.
So I think I want to begin with a quote in Sanskrit, which says, Sarati Samati Iti Sansaram. The world is ever evolving. And we need to keep that in mind. And what better time than COVID times to tell us there's evolution happening. And Darwin wasn't only in our books. He was talking about this kind of evolution and survival of the fittest, which has happened now. But the message I would like to give, okay, we have polluted the earth. What are we doing with space now? We have started polluting the space, the white space that we have now, as in the space waste that has come in, because of the numerous launches that we've had, and they just left there in space to move around. And one of the little things that we did in our school, and I'm sure many schools have done it, was to use e-waste very fruitfully. And I must share this because one of these e-waste arts went to COP23 in Bonn, Germany from our school. And the painting, which was behind the buses, was from our school during COP23. So I think we need to think of innovative ways how to keep the space out there clean. We, of course, are cleaning. We are doing, firefighting now, but let's think about how to also keep the space clean, the soil clean, the water clean, and ensure that we begin with our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rupa ma'am. Now moving on to Mr. Piyush.
Right, sure. So I think that just want to end very quickly. Where the theme was more about investing in our future. So just on the same lines, we should all commit to investing our time, energy, resources towards sustainability, and really start thinking about what our actions and how sustainable are that going forward. So that can make a big difference. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Piyush. And now I would like to pose this question to Mrs. Ananya Bhattacharya.
As Rupa spoke of space, I'd like to say that our Earth is just an island in the space. And, this nature culture journey, which was, we were talking of, our keywords are Malama Honua, that's in Hawaiian, which means to care for our island Earth. I think all of us must commit to care for our island Earth. And we need to start at every step, at an individual level, at community level, and together, collectively. But one thing to all, we should say we must not litter. I think that is one thing we must all stop, be it littering the space, be it littering with beer bottles when we go for the picnic beside the river. We must stop littering. I think that's one very important thing.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now moving with Mr. Olivier.
Thank you. As it is about collaboration, indeed. I mean, I'm very impressed always that the good quality collaboration we have with DICE and with other players and with Earth Day. So going on with this conversation is key, and we have maybe other meetings with the Transforming Education Summit, International Peace Day, International Day of Education, make sure that some of this conversation go on. But most importantly is what do we do concretely on the ground together? And we are starting many programs. We can't address everything at the same time. So often we bring together young people around the youth empowerment and training game changers, or we bring some specific programs on learning for sustainability, mapping the good players across Africa, for instance, and how can we join forces. So it is a quick word of calling to action, but anyone who wants to join forces on specific programs, really very happy to discuss and see what we can take further together on the ground.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olivier. Now closing this question with finally Mr. Anbang.
Right. Thank you so much to all the panelists. I've had an incredible time learning from all of you. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, if I cannot do greater things, I can do small things in a great way. So we can be successful by doing things smaller and building up from there. So no matter how big your dream is, to make an impact for climate change, doing the small things count a lot. And in the end, it will collectively make a greater impact. And we have to trust the process and work towards it. And like Mr. Olivier mentioned, collaboration is essential in this process because we are always better and stronger together. And for all the organizations who are working even at a grassroots level all the way up there, I think it is really important for there to be a sense of connectivity and cohesion so that everyone can work together and achieve the common goal that we're trying to get at. So that would be my closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anbang. This conversation has been deeply such a deep learning experience, and obviously I'll be coming back to you for disturbing you with my own queries. Now moving on to the next sessions, I would like to call upon Kathy for Q&A session between participants and panelists. So over to you, Kathy.
Thanks, Meera. It was a fantastic session with so many ideas, initiatives, solutions that we all have heard from our esteemed panelists. One thing is for sure, that the panelists here are not just to give us theory. They are practicing what they are preaching. They have come up with practical solutions which they have been living and seeing around them. Thank you so much to each one of you. I would like to take some of the questions of the participants who have posted their queries inquisitively during the registration stage itself. Much appreciated. The first question is, today many solutions are being proposed amongst the people citing environmental sustainability, be it segregation of waste, use of cloth bags, environmental friendly products, organic food. But the cost at which these things come makes it completely out of reach for many common people, especially for the low income group. So what measures are being taken to overcome this challenge? I would request any of the panelists to come up with their answer.
My answer is, when we are thinking of the cost, this cost, we should think in terms of what the other way of life is costing us. So solar energy might be expensive, but what is coal-based power doing? And of course, there will be talks of subsidy and affordability and all those, but we should not think of cost when it's a matter of sustainability of our island. Back instead of a plastic back to the market, that's not costly. It's an issue of attitude, and we are buying branded dresses and branded watches and iPhones, and we are not thinking of cost, right? And even among poorer and less privileged, so we need to build a brand of this cause so that the cost question does not arise. I think.
Sure, Ananya. In fact, I would like to pick up one of the answers already given by one of the panelists, that the minimalist approach is the right approach for the time being, especially when we are considering contributing to environment and climate change. If we have control over our own requirements, where we are able to distinguish between requirements, luxury, and comfort, perhaps this decision will not be as big as we are seeing it to be. Thanks. The next question is, what is your understanding on sustainability and climate action? Are they complementing each other, or one is the subset of other, or they are interreactive?
I could just add a line over here. They're symbiotic. They coexist. They are symbiotic, and we need to remember that to tip the balance of one would result in the other also getting unbalanced. So I would say they are symbiotic.
Thank you, Ms. Rupa. Next, how do we build together a new narrative, moving from climate crisis to climate solutions, and see a positive outcome on current situation?
Maybe that's something I jump in. I mean, this asks for a lot of co-creation, having many voices around the table that can tell different stories. It has to be embodied by real-world projects. But it is true that confronted to so many challenges, having a culture of hope and collective engagement is very important, because if you are too much in the worries, there's denial, and then you get people denying the problems, or there's kind of a fear, which is too much, which paralyzes people, and eco-anxiety. So we have together, whatever the challenges, to build these new narratives, to co-create them, to have thought leaders as well as people from every culture bringing this together, and not having this uniform kind of a bit sad and less imaginative narrative. So how to do this? Through events bringing together people, through the programs themselves that you can showcase, through papers, media, many different kinds of things. So that's a whole process of creating a movement for change around positive narrative, whatever it takes.
Sure, Olivia. In fact, your answer is bang on. Just to make it more precise, I think we all have small narratives in our own way. Climate action is not a single narrative. We all are working in a particular direction. But when everything is collaborated together to make a bigger narrative, perhaps there will be different layers, and those different layers, when collaborated, may give you the result that you're looking for. Thank you.
And just quickly on this one, you need to experiment it with everything. And we've realized, talking with Club of Rome, that even if you have the best storytelling of what is going to happen and how to change it, if it is only intellectual, it doesn't change the way people do. So you have to fill it with art, to have to fill it with many different ways also. So the narrative has to be multidimensional also.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And the last question, why are we lagging behind in our goal to achieve green Earth in spite of working on this direction for so many years? We all have that question.
I think that because at the same time we continue to pollute the earth. It's a very funny saying that I came across recently. If the West does it, it is energy security, and if the poor nations do it, then it's climate change. So I mean, there's a lot of paradox in the way in which a lot of the things, the way that we lead our lives, even internally. be it how rural people are living or how urban people are living, and the concern for environment is different for different people. But I mean, if we leave that aside, we really need to think about what we can do as an individual first, and then go one step forward, taking it at a community level, at a state level, national level, and then finally global level. So just break those things down into small things and whatever is achievable by us, and then take it forward.
Sure. Thanks, Piyush, for that insight. I think Akshit has raised a hand. Akshit, you can unmute and share your question, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good afternoon from India. I have a small query. We have been talking about sustainable food habits, sustainable production and consumption. So where does the concept of veganism fits into this domain? Also, with the population expanding, the meat market is also getting strained. So how much consumption of meat is too much consumption? Is it time that we move on from consuming meat?
Shall I answer? I think we have the mathematics on footprint, right? And the way we live right now, once I did my own footprint calculation and I found the amount of travel I did, I need 3 Earths to sustain people like me. So it's not really that I can limit my consumption within those parameters, but what we need to do is to assess and, you know, take action to reduce. In a way, pandemic has helped us in connecting, in learning these online tools, and I really hope that we'll continue this and keep on meeting more online than going back to the original pattern of life all of us had in traveling long distances. But it's a very tricky thing, you know. You can't say that I will not do this as it is too much. But we will all need to, you know, balance, adjust. So that's why we all need to work together, which is kind of the underlying theme of today's meeting.
Okay, I think we have hit our time and we have had this successful in-depth session. What we have gathered out of it, if I can summarize, we discussed about what we need to do to care for our Mother Earth, how we can have education in primary and secondary section, how we can foresee future of education, how climate change can be channelized to younger generation. Ms. Rupa said very well that we are currently doing firefighting in some areas. We also acknowledge that collaboration is the key to have a completely new picture. Individual actions will have more impact than individual impact. Actions may not have as much impact as collective action. We need to stop consumerism and try to live as a minimalist. Doesn't mean, like the last panelist said, it need not be that we stop doing what we are doing, but whatever we do should be a consciously thought through effort. Now I would like to thank and end with a word of thanks. It's been an honor to be among such accomplished individuals and who are able to present their collective perspective on how different actions have different impact and where we need to progress in near future. And I also thank to each of our participants for being here today and to patiently listen to what we had to say, what the panelists had to say. I, on behalf of our partners and entire team of DIAS, Learning Planet, Earth Day, and Tears of Earth, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the participants, to all the speakers for gracing with their presence, and all the panelists in specific for sharing their experiences, findings, and opinions today. Thank you so much.